Hello, everybody. It's 5:30 a.m. Central Time on the 9th of November, 2022. It's Wednesday here in the United States. Been up all night. Major seismic activity taking place. And I've got a new forecast I'm going to be getting out. Let me quickly bring you up to speed so you can at least know what's happened since my last update. First of all, a large earthquake struck in Italy. Central Italy on the plate boundary. I haven't gone to even look for videos of damage yet, but it went up to 6.1. Here now at 5.6 and big swarm on the plate boundary in Italy. Same sized earthquake, 6.1. Downgraded to 5.6 as well. Struck on the plate boundary at Nepal, China's border. This was the last day of the warning for China, last day of the warning for Italy. Italy was warned for 6.1, 6.1 hit. China was warned for up to 6.5, possibly as high as 7, instead of 6.1 hit, and I'm way off on the location in China. I warned over here, and instead it hit here, at the Nepal border. Well, you could say it hit Nepal at the China border. But the size earthquake is what matters, and the country matters, getting it down to a region for China, getting it down to 70 miles on the plate boundary in Italy. I'm not bragging, I just have to tell you that we got it down to 70 miles here and down to the day and down to the country and down to the magnitude in China. Check them both off the list. Now, the point of this update, this big, deep 7.0 earthquake and two other earthquakes struck along with it. First, a 6.8 struck down below the location. And I'm going to highlight the 6.8 here on the screen. Struck at 3:38 a.m. UTC time, 9:38. So just remember this, UTC 9:38, and it's a 6.8. Deep earthquake down at 628 kilometers deep. A lot of numbers there, right? Okay, just big, deep earthquake, 6.8 starts this off. Then, a few minutes later, at 9:51, a deep 7 strikes at 653 kilometers deep. So now we have two deep earthquakes back to back. Then a third deep earthquake struck down at 631 kilometers deep at 10:14 UTC. So it was a succession of 6.8, 7.0, and 6.6. Sorry, I almost knocked my microphone over there again. It's a regular problem of mine. Okay, so 3 deep earthquakes. What does that mean? Well, to show you what's going on, I need to jump over to the USGS plate boundary map. Something's going on down below this section of the Indo-Australian plate. So down below the plate, something's going on in the magma or in the semi-melted area called the asthenosphere down below the plate. There's something in the semi-plasticky area there that's hammering into the underside of the Indo-Australian plate where it meets up with Pacific Ocean or the Pacific plate. Now that's going to spread up, out, and away in all directions from the big deep quake. It's actually pretty basic physics. When you leverage in on the underside of something, then the leveraging force comes up through whatever you're leveraging on and spreads up, out, and away. I'm going to turn on something here that I don't normally use much, which is the shell feature. The shell feature shows us a big dome around the earthquake, so you can kind of see it. Hopefully you can see it here on the screen. Maybe zoom it in a little. Now you see where the perimeters of the big shells go out to. Now we're going to watch on all sides of the shell when we look at the plate boundary. So where does the shell spread out according to this plate boundary? Well, we already have arrows and X's to watch for this. This has happened in the past. We've had a big, deep 8 here before, and I'll tell you what happened with that in a second. But first, look where the shell spreads out to. It spreads out to our 2 X's down here at Point Nemo. It spreads out to our 2 arrows spreading out over towards South America. It spreads out to our other arrow going across towards Mexico. It spreads out to the north, right across an open area at Tamu-Massif, right next to Hawaii. This is Tamu-Massif. This is Hawaii. It spreads out right to there. It also spreads out over to the west, right onto the plate boundary next to Guam. Down to the southwest, it goes out all the way over into Papua New Guinea, spreads across Australia. right here across the whole Indo-Australian plate on the northwest side up by our arrow, and the southwest side down by the Dutch Sense logo. Okay, now that you saw that, let me just draw it out here for you. All the way around here, we're going to spread up, out, and away. Next to the deep earthquakes, we watch for big movement to take place. Well, what's next to the deep earthquake? Look what it is. It's like a triangular shape area where we can go to the west, we go to the south. I also mentioned we can go over to the east. All of this is going to take place. So a huge amount of movement is taking place down below the Indo-Australian plate now, and it's going to spread to the west, to the north, to the south, to the east, all directions. But it's going to follow these red lines. It's also going to follow the fracture zones over to the east, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. But we're going to head out over to the west on this. It's going to spread pretty quickly in the next 7 to 10 days. I should be making several videos over the next 7 to 10 days, talking about large earthquakes spreading out and away from this big, deep earthquake. Now let me bring up a time where there was one that was bigger. A big, deep 8. Yes, a deep 8 happened down below this location before. When that happened, spreading out away, we saw 6s, not a shallow or larger earthquake. It was pretty interesting. Now 6s started and went to the west, went over to here. Then 6s branched off, like we would expect, go up towards Japan, and 6s spread out over to the west, over into Asia. Then 6s spread all in the week across all the way over to Europe, following our arrows, went out to here. 6s struck out at the mid-Atlantic ridge. Then, instead of going through the planet back where the X is, it carried on against the arrows, went back through Alaska, struck with a new 6 here along the coast of Alaska, then went down to Japan, struck with a new mid-range 6 here on the coast of Japan, then came back down, and boom, 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 multiple 7s hit in a row, tsunami activity and a bunch of volcanic activity accompanying it. You guys might remember that. So let me recap. A deep 8 happened here, then it was 6s all the way across the entire planet, back around, back down to pretty much where it originated from as best as it could, a wave going around the planet. Now, what kind of wave could go around the planet? There's only one kind of wave that could go around the whole planet, following these red lines across over to the west, up to the north, and spacing out earthquakes hundreds, if not thousands of miles apart that are somewhat equally spaced across a huge distance. Let me show you what I think is happening. First of all, I think down below the plates where this big deep 7 is, something called a concentric standing wave is forming, which is really just a wave that forms in on itself in a cavity or a pocket or a round or circular formation underneath. Now look, hammers in on itself. The full force of the wave coming in through the fluid or the gel-like plasticky asthenosphere down below, hammering up into the underside of the plate, the combined force of the whole wave. But then, as it hammers in, a jackhammering action, this starts to happen. A wave starts to spread through the tank, if you will, and it gets down to one end, and it reflects back into itself. When it reflects back into itself, look what happens. A standing wave begins to form, where the amplitude, the magnitude, increases as it basically goes back into itself, hammering in from one end, going down to the other, hammering back into itself. Now, make note of the spacing on these waves. I'm just going to park my mouse over the top of one of the waves. You'll notice that first, of course, the top of the wave passes the crest or the peak of the wave. Then the trough or the valley of the wave fills in the middle point perfectly, where I don't have to move my mouse. Top, middle, top, middle, top, middle. And I think, well, I don't just think, I think we've shown that the spreads of earthquakes are matching that, but not going through an even tank. But they're still showing that equal distribution that you would expect with a standing wave. But the standing wave I'm talking about is one that's spreading thousands of miles in multiple directions, following this, the red lines, the plate boundaries. So now you can think of the plate boundaries like a wave guide that's guiding a wave through something or around something. The earthquakes are getting dropped off along the way as the wave is spreading. So what are we going to look for? Let's get a forecast out on this. We're going to watch for 7 to 10 days up front, possibly as long as 14 days. So 7 days puts us, of course, to the 16th. 10 days puts us to the 19th. 14 days puts us to the 23rd. So this is going to be a long 2-week time. I'm going to really just watch for the 7 to 10 day time period, which takes us to the 16th to the 19th. Coming up from this deep earthquake, first thing we're going to watch for, of course, I have to talk to my people down in New Zealand. Let's go look at the plate boundary map. So, big push coming up just north of New Zealand. It's going to spread to the west, it's going to spread to the south, it's going to spread to the east, it's going to spread all the way across the plate boundaries, going all the way to Europe, and it's going to go to the United States as well as South America and so forth. So if it's going to go that far, it's definitely going to be going down to your neck of the woods, down in New Zealand. So let's go look at our current earthquakes and try to find a halfway point between our current sets of quakes to find the new spot that's going to be struck by something at least a full magnitude larger than where we are now. And we're currently at 4.4, so we'd at least be going up to 5.4 on land in New Zealand in the next few days. And that's pretty big for on land in New Zealand anywhere. So that, it could go way bigger. Again, this is just preliminary on New Zealand. So we would go 1 magnitude larger down to the south right off the bat in the first few days. So the only point we watch now is where the rings overlap. There's a new deep earthquake down below Christchurch, and we're going to watch just north of Christchurch where the rings overlap. It's pretty obvious. You see where they overlap? They all overlap right here. Wellington south to Kaikoura again. So what's Wellington to Kaikoura? Look where the plate boundary goes across. So we got a big push coming up. We go all the way down to the south side, and in the middle, that's where the break is going to happen between the deep earthquake and the end of the plate boundary down to the south. At the same time, we're going to see big activity pop off around this new deep earthquake. Shallow, big activity. And when I say big, it should be at least in the upper 6 to low 7 range, about the same size as this. In the past, when we see deep 7s, we tend to see next to the deep 7s big earthquake activity. So where do we watch next to the big quake? Well, we watch just like down in New Zealand. We watch in between our current sets of earthquakes, right next to it. So where the rings overlap, where do they overlap? New Caledonia. It's like a target. So first spot we watch, New Caledonia. What size? Same size, but shallow, up above it. Think of this like down in a basement, and we're going to be coming up to the surface level from the basement. Or think of it like this. You're down below something, and you're pushing up on the underside of something. And up above it, something's going to break. What you're pushing on up above is going to go break. And it's going to be about the same size as the amount you're pushing down below or greater, depending on if you're in the fluid or not, hammering into the underside of the plate. One more time. I cannot stress this enough. The concentric standing wave, the singularity, the combination of the wave focusing in on itself. That happening out of the magma down below, but over hundreds, if not thousands of square miles. And the wave that's focusing in isn't a fluid. It's a very low frequency electrically induced wave that's traveling through the magma coming up from the core of the earth or wherever. I can't prove the core of the earth is a plasma ball yet, or plasma whatever, plasma torch. I shouldn't say ball. There's some debate on that, and I rightfully accept that. So anyway, we watch next to the deep quake for big activity equal to or greater. Also, we watch across the plate. See the two arrows? Remember the big dome I had just turned on a few minutes ago, and it reached out right to the backside of these big arrows? Let's turn that on again one more time. There it is. It reaches all the way out to the backside of our two arrows. Well, where do the two arrows point? Let's go back to the USGS map. Two arrows point up here, north side, and south side of the Nazca Plate. Nazca Plate, of course, meets up with the Pacific. But those two arrows go right back like a letter V, back to where we get this wedging action or leverage action that comes up underneath the Indo-Australian plate and is spreading out in all directions, like I told you. So it's spreading out in all directions. Well, hold on. Let's go take a look now over at Earthquake 3D one more time. Spreading out over to this. To what? There's an undersea mount or undersea mount ridge that you can see here. Clearly, it goes down and across and over in a crescent shape. Bends back up into Peru. Now, you can follow this undersea mount chain that, as far as I can tell, no professionals ever talked about. And it goes back up here to the Hawaiian Island chain and meets up the Hawaiian Island chain. And it carries on. Goes back up and goes up to Kamchatka and meets it like an arrow up to the north, up into Kamchatka. So I just showed you an undersea mount ridge that cuts the whole Pacific in half in a giant crescent shape. Now, Hawaii branches off of that and goes over to Hawaii. Island chain goes over and deads into the big island of Hawaii. but you can see the fracture zone it dead ends into. Now, across is Tamu Massif, the largest undersea mount on the planet, I think, or the second largest, or one of the largest. And Mauna Loa is, if not the largest, one of the largest shield volcanoes on the surface of the planet. So it's like a percentage sign or a yin-yang sign where literally you have a big volcano on one side and a big on the other on both sides of this undersea mountain ridge. So now that you know what to look for, you can see this undersea mountain ridge goes down, across, back up, and into South America. Now, why does that matter? Let's go look at the USGS map. What do they have going across there? Nothing. So we get deep earthquakes that come up down below the Indo-Australian plate. The power, force, or wave, the VLF, very low frequency, ultra low frequency, wave coming up through the plate, spreading out and away from where the origin point is, hammering in below, and then it reaches the breaks in the plates, which are literally fractures through the plates where they meet up with one another, and it follows it out like a waveguide to the north, to the south, and then transfers into the middle of the Nazca plate over far to the east. How many thousands of miles is that? 1, 2, 3 to 4,000 miles across the Nazca plate. The middle also equalizes or compensates in the middle. So it goes to the north, it goes to the south, and it breaks in the middle. Sound familiar? Look what we're looking at right now. These are the earthquakes from yesterday. Notice anything about them? Same size on the north, same size on the south. And you say, well, Dutch, there's nothing in the middle. This is where the 5.9 earthquake broke just a few days back. It's probably still on the feed. There it is, right in the middle. 5.96 broke right in the middle. Well, what's there? Look. It's that crescent shape that I showed you. It goes back down across to Rapa Nui and the Easter Island, then branches off to the north, goes back up to the Hawaiian Island chain. Now, everything east of here has these equally spaced or somewhat equally spaced fracture zones that carry on over to the east. Just make note of that. They all reach back to this undersea mount chain, the crescent shape that cuts the whole Pacific in half. Now, everything west of there is uplift. Do you see it? All the undersea mounts, all the volcanoes here, millions of them, if not, there's probably more than millions, but you can definitely see them. So upwelling pressure on one side, spreading out to the other. And it's been doing this apparently for a long time, because you can see it in the topography of the ocean sea floor. So nothing across the USGS map, but I just showed it to you. It's a big crescent shape that comes down, goes across into the Nazca plate, and into Peru. So what happens when we leverage in over here? It spreads out to the other side. All that explanation to tell you. This comes up on the other side, and it spreads out over to here. Equally, usually, on all sides of the plate, plus in the middle. So if we get a big 7 on one side, guess what usually happens? A big near 7, or maybe even greater, but usually about the same size, like a tennis match back and forth, breaks out in South America. And then we just look between our current sets of earthquakes. We go back to the standing wave. We go back to this video, where we just literally look between our current sets of the wave. So let me pause it here. So what's the halfway point between this wave peak and this wave peak? Well, the middle, of course, right? It's pretty simple, right? Between this peak, and that's the middle. Well, look what happens. I'll move it forward one frame. The wave goes down, the standing wave goes down and comes up in the middle. So now let's apply that to the earthquakes. So this is a peak, and this is a peak, and in the middle we're going to get a break. And guess where the push is coming from? Up from below. Think of this now three-dimensionally. So now that you understand it going 2D, going linear through a tank, think of this coming up from down below and then spreading up out and away in a dome or a bubble. And that's why these shells actually matter. So when I turn on the shell feature and show it to you, I don't normally use it, but I can also turn off the earth so we can look in and see what I'm talking about a bubble of pressure coming up underneath the plate. And then it spreads out, up, and away from down below. And again, this can happen whether or not the earth is, whatever shape the earth is. When you push on the underside of something, or you lift on the underside of something, you understand that force goes through it and spreads out to cracks. So when you lift on the underside of the Indo-Australian plate, or when Mother Nature does, it spreads up to the cracks that are already in the plate, and then out across it. So 7 in South America, right smack in the middle, Peru incoming. That's going to fulfill the forecast for Peru which technically expires today as well, but I'm extending it for a few more days because of this. Over to the west we go now that we've issued the warning for South America. We're going to also have to issue a warning for Indonesia, Japan, Asia, US, Europe. It's going to go all the way around the planet here, guys. So I'm going to be on, most likely, many times over the next several days, doing updating as we go across the planet. But I can already tell you we're going to spread in between our current deep earthquakes, where our next earthquake is going to strike over to the west. So deep earthquakes are easy to identify, raised high off the globe by Earthquake 3D, so we can see them easily. And we're going to watch right in here. Again, it's one of the most earthquake-prone zones on the planet, so we shouldn't be shocked when it gets hit with a new 7+. Now, when I'm issuing warnings for 7+, I'm applying my new rule, which I'm starting this week, which is to accommodate for downgrades with the USGS and professionals from Geophone Potsdam and the EMSC and so forth. So if I issue a warning for a 7, I'm automatically applying a -1 magnitude downgrade onto my forecast. I'm telling you I'm watching for a 7, but to the public, I'm issuing the 6. So we're minusing off a magnitude, and it can come in anywhere between 5 and 7 is what I'm getting at here. We're accommodating for their downgrades. Same goes for down in New Zealand. When we're warning, we're accommodating for a potential 1 magnitude downgrade, which could put you anywhere from from 3.4 up to 5.4. But of course, I'm taking into account that I'm magnitude off. I'm just minusing it off up front and assuming that they're going to be downgrading it up to a magnitude on each location. Okay? And that's just to accommodate for their downgrades. We're still naming the original magnitude that I would normally warn for, okay? In other words, we're naming both. The magnitude I warn for and 1 magnitude less. Accommodating for the downgrade, which then gives me a magnitude spread. And that then cuts out any shenanigans of downgrades. In the middle we watch, okay? So that's where the next big quake should hit. And then, or not in succession. This should not happen like dominoes. So this is going to be over the next 7 to 10 days. It's going to be like a game of leapfrog going out across over to Europe and out across up into Japan. Japan, we have to warn, as well as Taiwan. So previously, Philippines got hit, huge earthquake. Taiwan got hit, huge earthquake. This time, it's going to strike on the north side of Taiwan, and this also encompasses into South Japan, where Kyushu has slightly moved, but not as expected this past week. So Kyushu's kind of a strikeout for me this past week on what I warned for. I warned for a 6, and I think a 5 came rolling in. I was a full magnitude under, and it's not that big of a deal for them there with a 5. But now with this new big push coming across, we're going to take it up a full magnitude. We have to warn them for potential of up to 6.5. And this goes from Taiwan. Could be 2 separate earthquakes, or it could be a single quake in between. If it's in between, it'll strike right here at the middle, in between the two, which will be Okinawa. But I have to warn everybody, 2 different spots, 2 different quakes. But there's likely, if I'm going to put, a bet on it, it would be in the middle. I think 1 would strike if I'm looking for 2, and they're both the same size. 2 6.5s or 1 6.6 or 6.7 in the middle. Will it matter? For the people in Okinawa, it will. If I'm wrong on this and it strikes on both sides, then it'll matter for the people in Taiwan and South Japan. If I'm right on this, well, then the one earthquake might strike in the middle, and it would, of course, matter to the people in Okinawa. Either way, we got to warn all 3 sets of people for that. Should happen in the next 7 to 10 days. People in Japan. Well, guys, look, the last time I issued the warning, we warned you for a 6 to hit in South Tokyo, and a 5.9 struck right off the coast. I was 199 miles off from my epicenter warned area. I'm trying to get it down to 200 miles. Well, now you have a new 5 here in downtown North Tokyo. So we warned between where the 2 arrows are, or 2 rings are, where the arrow is. Let me show you. It's at the H-shape plate boundary. Think of this like a 2-arm scale. And we're going to break in the middle on the plate boundary. Why? Well, down to the south. This big diamond shape, this big plate that goes down to the south. Look at it. Stepping stone path of earthquakes leading right back over to where I just issued the warning and where the deep earthquake is. And it's going to be coming up to you and going over to the United States. The flow, this seismic wave that I keep talking about, this standing wave, is going to be flowing to you, and then we just look to the middle points between the new earthquakes to find where the next one's going to hit. So that's where we watch. Further up to the north, where the rings overlap on Hokkaido, next spot to watch. Now, we're going to take a magnitude step down as we go further away from this. So we would just apply standard common physics to this, and as the wave is spreading out, it should dissipate somewhat, but it's not that big of a step down to go from 7s to 6s, right? It's one magnitude drop across 10,000 miles. So this VLF, ultra low frequency, whatever, wave that's spreading through, it's going to strike here, and it should be in the low 6 range, or 5.9. We're still applying the -1 magnitude off just potential, which could bring it at 4.9. But as we go over to Alaska, where 3 sets of rings overlap, right at the pinnacle tip of the Aleutian Island chain going on to the actual peninsula for Alaska, right here is Bogoslov Volcano. Now, I don't forecast for eruptions, but along the way, you see these letter Vs. Letter Vs are volcanoes that we've seen erupt big time in the past. They mark different spots where we watch, so we have to warn the people in Alaska as well for potential activity, volcanic, but I don't forecast volcanic activity. I just tell you, we watch for new increases, like along the way, basically, when a seismic flow is going through a huge area. So big seismic flows going through a big area, we watch for multiple volcanoes to start showing increased activity, including large blast, but I don't forecast for that. We tend to see it. So right next to Bogoslov, new seismic. Incoming 6.0 level activity, and it should take place over the next few days. 6.0, again 5.9, potential there too. Again, USGS 1 magnitude downgrade. Now for my Indonesian viewers, guys, first of all, much love. I know you came under recent scrutiny by the mainstream media and the Carnegie Institute for Peace. No, I'm sorry. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. The official Carnegie Institute came after my viewers from Indonesia and smeared them for something they didn't do. I'm not going to get into it now. I will post the mainstream media article down below where you can read this absolute BS from the Carnegie Institute itself, where they're trying to frame an Indonesia group that I gave permission to use my name, Dutch Sense, to spread earthquake information. They're trying to blame them for spreading original COVID information from China. And it turns out the story they're talking about is something that was already in the news like a couple months earlier or something. They're trying to say it originated on the Dutch Sense page. From China. China agents infiltrated my page and posted... This is the Carnegie Institute said this. Anyway, to my people over in Indonesia, we have a Gempa earthquake. The Gempa earthquake, right? Translation, I hope I'm saying that right. So a new earthquake warning that I'm issuing, and it's actually a warning. This isn't just a watch. With this big quake like this, we have the potential to go up to upper 6.0 level activity. And we watch between our current sets of earthquakes. So it's pretty obvious where to watch. We have to watch the S-shaped plate boundary here in Indonesia, shaped like a letter S. If we go over to the USGS plate boundary map, it doesn't look like a letter S, it just looks like a jostled bunch of lines, but the actual shape of the plate boundary is S-shaped. So we warn right in the middle between the sets of quakes. And the magnitude could go up to 6.9. Again, we're taking in the USGS potential for 1 magnitude downgrade, so don't fault me if it comes in at 5.9 or less. But not too far less. Again, I mean, we're just minusing 1 magnitude off when I issue a warning. If I warn for a 6.9, we will also accept a 5.9 if the USGS downgrades it. You know what? Okay. Over to the west, we also have a warning we have to issue in far western Sumatra, Indonesia. Looking at the last 2 days worth of quakes, there's one that's missing in here that the Europeans reported yesterday. USGS doesn't have it. If they did, you would see a 4 somewhere right in here in Sumatra, and then we would watch between that 4 that you don't see. Just imagine a 4 somewhere right here by this letter V that is where our volcano is, Sinabung. But so imagine a 4 there, and then in between the letter S and where the other 4 would be, look what we have. See it? It's a deep earthquake. A deep earthquake is down below Java. So up above Java, up above the deep earthquake in Java, we're going to see a new break that's most likely 6 to 6.5. So I'm expecting a bigger earthquake at the S-shaped plate bend, but still 6 to 6.5 at the other bend in the plate that goes out over to the west, over towards Europe. And that's where we're going to start the forecast for Europe. So Europe already has an incoming new push. First of all, Italy just got hit. Italy's hit. The flow is going out now, out to the mid-Atlantic ridge. I've got a warning going for North UK for 5.0 level activity, up to 5. Again, minus off 1 magnitude in case they downgrade it, up in Scotland. Scotland! Guys, I'm coming. Coming up there. So Scotland's going to get hit off the push that you currently see. But I'd already told you about it. A new break just happened here today. Same size as what hit over in Europe today. Within hours of each other. First this one, then the one over in Europe. But guess what? This one is a new push coming across. It's the same size wave. It's bouncing back and forth in there for the last several days. So there's a new break that's going to happen here first, right here at the Turkey border with Iran. This could go as far south as Israel, but I doubt it. Most likely up here on the north side of the plate boundary. Let me show you the USGS plate boundary map one more time. Over here where Turkey is, do you see it? There's 2 lines that meet together and they're kind of open. We're going to watch right there where the plate boundary comes out of Iran, goes out over into Europe. So let me recap. A line of earthquakes is expected to go up to Japan, over into Alaska. A line of earthquakes is expected to go out over to the west across Indonesia. A line of earthquakes is expected to go down to the south towards New Zealand and to spread out across into South America in both directions to the north and south and the middle. That's a lot, right? So north part of South America, central part of South America, south part of South America, where all 3 lines come in the middle point. New Zealand, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, every spot. Look, I'm going to be on for the next week. This is a hell of a forecast because we're going all the way out over towards Asia already, and I've already talked about like 6 or 7 different spots. Now we're in Europe, and the new push is coming in now from the current push where it's going to break in between these. Now, another push is coming, and that's going to be coming out of Indonesia that I just got done issuing the forecast for, from the 7. So this new push that's coming now is going to also go out over into China, and then over into the Mideast, and then over into Europe. So what's going to happen in China? China, you're going to get hit again. And last time I was wrong on location. I was looking here, and it hit here. Let's go look at the USGS map and see what happened. I thought it was going to hit over here where the A is in China, or just south of the letter A. I thought it was going to strike over here. And instead it made a hard bend and went over to the west. Now what happened? Throughout the week, a bunch of earthquake activity broke out right here, in between the two, where the bend is and where the current earthquake is now. So apparently, I'm looking here on the east side, and instead the flow went up, around, and broke all across here, and went back over towards the plate boundary, heading out towards Europe. Hence my new warning for Turkey in the next few days. But the next push is even bigger. It's way bigger. The last push we were dealing with was deep 5s, guys. Deep 5s. Deep 4s and 5s. Now we're dealing with a deep 7 and 3 of them, basically. A 6.8, a 6.6, and a 7. 3 big, deep quakes down below the whole Indo-Australian plate. It's going to be coming this way, like I said, dropping off 6s all along the way. Guess who's going to get hit with another 6? China. And then, since I was wrong last time, I'm going to go with that, and we'll stick on the plate boundary and watch between the plate boundary here, right north of Bangladesh, and over to the east where I previously issued my warning. Now that's more than 200 miles, but when it's a 6 in here in the Himalayan, they feel it all the way across. It's usually a big amount of shaking going on. We have to warn everybody from North India into Nepal, across Bangladesh, over here, and is that Burma too? No, that's not Burma. Dang it. Hold on. Bhutan, I'm sorry. Burma, I don't know where I got. Bhutan. But anyway, we would watch everywhere from North India, Nepal, across Bhutan, over into China, for the new break to take place. but I will accept as far over to the east as an earthquake forecast hit because it could go around the outside edge of the plate again. Look, with a big push like this, I think it's going to move pretty much everything. Once we get up to Japan or Siberia, I can issue a warning for Siberia. Russia, нет, Zdrominskaya, or however you say earthquake in Russian. Меня зовут Михаил Янич. Здравствуйте, как вы позвите? Здравствуйте, товарищ. I took a little Russian in high school. That means hello, friend. I'm going to get trolled now, right? Okay. Anyway, check it out, guys. Siberia. We'll issue a warning for Siberia. A rare 6 or 5.9. Upper 5 should come rolling across the middle of nowhere in Siberia up here by Lake Baikal because Japan's going to be moving, like I said. Alaska's going to be moving, like I said. And look where the arrows are. Arrows point back over to China, which points back over to Europe, which means Europe's going to get slammed. So let's go to Europe, talk about this. If we're going to be looking for 6s to come across all the way, guess where we pool up? Let's back it out and look. Coming out from the West Pacific, coming out from the Indo-Australian plate, going to the north to Japan, over to the west, across over through Mideast, going to Turkey. We pool up here. Think of this as almost the end of the wave tank. So we're going to break in South Europe again, and it's most likely going to be in Greece first. So Greece will see a big brunt of this in the next several days, going into the next 7 to 10 days. So we have, I think, some time to prepare. It could go pretty quick. It could be a few days. But the flow is coming across now. You already have one incoming break that's going to happen at Turkey, and we have a huge flow after that. Think of it like 2 storms. One dropped a fair amount of rain on a river. The next has dropped a huge deluge. Both are coming, and both are going to take pretty much the same path. Now, the good news I have is that by the time it gets all the way over here, I would think it would be in the low end 6 to mid-range 6. If it's all going to pool up, it'll be like 6.4 to 6.5, and it'll strike right in the middle of the Aegean Sea in between all of our current sets of earthquakes. So let's just take a look. Oh, wait. Well, okay. You don't see them here because the European feed is hogged up by this big stack. European feed's 50 earthquakes long, so it can get hogged up by a swarm of earthquakes really quick. But there's a bunch of earthquakes going in a ring. If you could see all the small quakes here, a bunch of earthquakes going in a ring around the Aegean Sea. But really, it's just going in a kind of a U shape around this, the plate boundary in South Europe. And that's going to break in the middle of the Aegean. So Italy then will get hit. After that, we will see a new earthquake strike just south of the current quake. That should be bringing us in down here at Campobasso. And Campobasso should break in the 5-ish range, 5 to 5.5. On land, that's a big deal. We've seen 3s take down houses and cause fatalities in Europe before, in Italy. Now, for my Eastern European viewers, Albania, over in Montenegro, also as far south as Bulgaria, and as far north as Kosovo going into Bosnia, guys, you're going to get hit as well. There's going to be a new round of mid-range 5s or greater, maybe as high as 5.9 as well, coming into Eastern Europe on top of the activity that's going to be striking down in Greece, on top of the activity that's going to be striking in Italy. This is going to be a really busy week, I think, going into next week, 7 to 10 days. Let me show you where we're talking about. See where the arrow is right here? Okay, that's the center of where we watch. So it's going to be just probably a flurry of activity back and forth, and I'm trying to get it within a magnitude. So now we're getting out towards the end of the 7-day watch for this location out to the west. Once we get further to the west, France, Tremblement de Terre, which means earthquake in French apparently. New earthquake in France should also strike right up at North France, right along the English Channel as these multiple pushes come across Europe. It's already there. There's a line of quakes leading out to North France already, but it's going to break on the English Channel. I've got a warning going for my Scottish viewers, sorry. It's UK, how about that? Northwest UK up here, up in North Scotland, there's a volcano called Achnaha, Achnaha, Achnaha crater, and we're watching on west side of Scotland for 5.0 level activity or upper 4, I'll accept. Again, like I said, within a magnitude. Over to the west, we got into the mid-Atlantic ridge where Iceland should start to see just a huge increase in the number of earthquakes. You might even see professionals start talking about new eruptive activity that's potential there. And I won't discount that out, but I don't issue forecasts for eruption. But they might start thinking that vibration of the incoming seismic wave is some kind of volcanic activity, which sometimes it does. It induces blasts. Imagine this wave that I've been showing you this whole update. The standing wave in this tank, imagine this passing through very low frequency, passing through a huge magma chamber, causing this inside the magma chamber, basically. But there's no air gap at the top, so it just goes right up into the plate. It doesn't hammer like with open air in there. Okay, now let's go over, now that we've talked pretty much about everywhere on the planet except for North America and Central America. Whoa, I didn't issue, the warning in the middle here for South America is extended. It did not hit in the past few days. If it hits, I'll talk about the additional time it's taken. But the warning for this issued was 7 days ago, so it expired last night. But I'm just extending the warning a few more days. It shouldn't take that long. We should see a new break over here in South Peru that's pretty big in the next few days. We'll get to Central America in just a moment for my Caribbean viewers, but this one's for the United States. So our earthquake activity we were expecting this past week for the West Coast, 3 of the 4 areas got hit, and they got hit with noteworthy, what I would call noteworthy earthquake activity. That actually there were videos released of people with shaking and stuff going on in their houses. But a 4 to 4.5, 2 different earthquakes, struck just south of the San Diego border with the United States and Mexico. And we warned San Diego to Salton Sea for a 4.9, and we got a 4.5 and a 4.0, plus 3s. If we add it together, it equals 4.6. So a 1 for a 4.9 and a 4.6 hit. We'll check that off the list. I have to check those off the list because up north, we also got a 4, which was downgraded to a 3.7. We also got a 4 that was downgraded to a 3.7 or a 3.6 now in Idaho. We also got a 4 that was downgraded to a 3.6 to 3.7 at the Utah-Arizona border. This is all in the same day. And then we also got a 3.6 to 3.7, now downgraded to 3.5, striking down in Texas. Now, this is on the edge of the North American craton. I'm going to make sure this graphic turns off, so it's only on for a little bit, but the earthquakes were mimicking the purple going out to the rusty brownish orangish color, which is the interior portion of the craton. Then the earthquakes go across the craton edge, all the way, following it perfectly all the way up to the East Coast. Take a look. This is 2 days worth of earthquakes. This is one of my biggest discoveries, that earthquakes flow around the cratons and around the plate boundaries. There's something else that's causing the quakes, that's dropping off the quakes along the way, as I've been explaining. What's going along the plate boundaries? This. Once it hits a plate, goes into the plate. Are you shocked? The wave gets absorbed into the plate, and then the wave travels across the plate, following the craton edge, which I've shown so many times in the past. So, earthquakes, 4s and 3s on the West Coast, going over to 3s and 2s going across the whole plate. It's not that much loss of energy to go to 4s, 3s, 2s. So let me stress this one more time. It's not one earthquake causing the other across this distance. It's that all these quakes are caused by the wave that's spreading out across this distance. And the wave is a very low frequency wave that's very powerful, and it's maintaining momentum going across these areas. That there is a wave coming off the west coast of the United States, for instance, a seismic wave being absorbed from the Pacific, and it's being absorbed by the North American craton and being taken across to the East Coast, and it's dropping off quakes along the way. Now, GPS measurements tell us that the plate at the surface is moving the other way. That at the surface, the plate is moving from east to west, according to GPS, and I don't deny that. So, if the surface is moving one way, and the earthquakes are moving the other, which they are, it's indisputable. Surface going one way, east to west. Earthquakes going west to east. Across North America, for instance. Well, what does that mean? To me, that says it's rolling over on itself. The top is physically moving one way, while the earthquakes are vibrating the other. Think of your mobile phone vibrating across a tabletop. Okay, your mobile phone vibrating one way, and it's moving the other, though, if you analyze it close. That the vibration is pushing it in the opposite direction than the way that the surface is moving. Right? Anyway, so that's what's happening across North America. So the earthquakes we were looking for, Northern California, 4.0. Southern California, 4.6, 4.5. And in the middle, multiple breaks. The only spot that didn't get hit with a 4, that was downgraded to a 3.7, is right where all of the rings overlap. Do you see where all these rings overlap? They overlap on Ridgecrest, the final location that has not been hit yet. So I'm going to keep the warning going. And we're going to keep the warning going in Central California, from just south of the Bay Area, south of Napa Valley, all the way down to Ridgecrest. It's more than 200 miles. I want to say it's 350. But we'll look to the center of it, which is the valley, going east to Ridgecrest. And the potential on this could go up to, you ready for it? 6.0 level activity could be incoming to the west coast of the United States on land at Central Southern California. And again, I have to pretty much tell everybody from the Bay Area all the way down to San Diego, because when a 6 hit, depending on how close we are to the San Andreas, let me just show you what I'm talking about here. So here's the Bay Area. Here's Bay Area. Ridgecrest is down here where there's just a white on the USGS map, and San Diego's down here. A big earthquake strikes out here in the Mojave, you've got this in the way. But a big earthquake strikes closer to the San Andreas, anywhere up along it, then you feel it all the way up the coast and all the way down going into Mexico even. So if it strikes back here, hardly anybody notices it over in LA and so forth. This stands in your way, basically. It absorbs it and takes it up into down to the south. If it strikes close to it, everybody feels it in LA and all the way up and all the way down. And the distance here is, let's see, this is a 50-mile key here. So we're talking 50, 100 miles. I mean, and I'm trying to get it down to 200 miles. That's my goal on earthquake forecasting, to be able to warn a region. So I have to warn the region of Central to Southern California, anywhere from south of the Bay Area all the way down to San Diego, but with the center of it being the spot where all the rings are overlapping, which is how we do it, where the rings overlap. Basic principle of the standing wave. And the rings are overlapping just like waves in a pond. So instead of dealing with just linear waves in a tank like this, imagine this three-dimensionally in a circular pond or a disc-shaped pond or a donut-shaped pond. Whatever the shape of Earth is. Probably all the above. Depends on what day of the week it is. It's a kerplunk shape. You know, it goes from oblong to long to... Turns out we're bending through space. Hey, there is no spoon. Right? It's not me that's bending, it's the spoon that's bending, right? Isn't that what the kid said? No, I got that backwards. Hey, let me just remind you something about that. That kid. Bald kung fu kid from The Matrix. There is no spoon kid. He's like, there is no spoon. And Neil's like, yep. Oh, I got it. Okay. Well, if there is no spoon, and it's all a construct of your own mind, then there is no red pill. Or blue pill. Right? Right? There is no spoon. There is no red pill. Anyway, back to it. Speaking of the red pill, I just red pilled you on earthquakes. The professionals said none of this was possible. Now, final warning here is going into Central America over into Caribbean. So let's just quickly go look at the plate boundary map for the Eastern Pacific, going to the Cocos Plate, as it's called, but let's just call it the small plate, south of North America. You see how it's connected to the Pacific. These are like wings on either side of the Pacific. Do you see that? It's almost like some giant fish or something. How ironic, right? Looks like a fish with its open mouth with dorsal fin and so forth. Anyway, on one side, we've got, of course, Japan. I've already issued the warning for the 6.0 level activity. On the other side, we have an equal distribution that's going to go up to Panama, Colombia. We have an equal distribution that's going to go down to South Chile. We have an equal distribution that's going to go across to potential 7.0 level activity in the middle in South America. Well, 6.5 level activity should break just north up here on the coast of Mexico to compensate for all that. So a big earthquake isn't coming to Mexico. If it strikes on land, it's really going to matter. If it strikes out in the ocean, everybody will be like, oh yeah, no big deal. 6.5 now. And I'm basing that magnitude on the rest of the magnitudes going around the whole planet that are expected. So that's for the west coast of Central America. Now, Southern California, like I said, 6.0 level activity anywhere from South Bay Area, just south of the Bay Area, Monterey Bay. Let me zoom in. Monterey Bay right here, creeping section of the San Andreas here. We jump across. Let me go over and show you on Google Earth now. Here's Monterey Bay. Here's the San Andreas. In the actual topography, we jump across in a diagonal line. That takes us into Ridgecrest. Now, we don't just randomly jump off in a diagonal line. There's a boatload of pumping operations that take us like a derailed train or a detour in a road. We come off the San Andreas and we jump over to all the drill points for oil and gas. That leads us in a diagonal line down through the valley, off the San Andreas, jumping off, over across, down to here, where there's tens of thousands of more drill points. So like perforations. See how many oil wells there are here, just next to Bakersfield, California? Goes all the way up and around, goes through town, back down through the farm fields. That's not for pumping water. That's getting black gold. We go down across, down in a big U shape here. This is all drilled all the way down through the south part of the valley. And going back around over to the San Andreas. Here's San Andreas. Here's your drill points. Take a look. If you've never seen this, you should probably look at the screen right now. These are all oil wells. They look like ants on the ground. And all the oil wells go right up. Here's San Andreas. Here's all your drill points. And guess what happens? The seismic flow, this wave that I've been talking about that travels along the red lines, when it gets down the San Andreas, it's traveling down the red line, it runs into these perforations that lead off and over to the east. And who's over to the east? The Garlock Fault. This, which is Ridgecrest, the experimental facilities for Raytheon, Boeing, and so forth, and the giant Starfort that makes up the entire area, where Area 51 and the nuke sites are on one side of it, and down here on the other side is 29 Palms military base and bombing range here. Bombing range on one side, bombing range nuke site on the other, Area 51 on the other, on the side of the Starfort that's there. Long story on the Starfort. So back to it. Big, deep earthquake. Big, deep earthquake. Huge. We should be seeing a big spread out and away from this. If you're an amateur viewer, you don't normally pay attention to earthquakes, let me stress this. You can watch this flow over the next several days. Watch as the earthquakes strike out and away from here. And I hope that it's less than what we're talking about. Hope in science, though, I don't have much hope. And so the chances of this going away, energy doesn't just disappear. It's going to transfer up, out, and away, and transform into the plate. It's going to come up out of the magma and go up into the solid of the plate. Then it's just a matter of the spread. How big is it going to be? And what are the magnitudes going to be along the way? How big is the standing wave going to be as it spreads out across the plate? Again, our hammering action that's coming in is huge. And then that's going to spread out and away across the plates and do this on a massive level where each one of the peaks of these waves is a 5 or a 6 or potentially larger. If it reflects back into itself, that's where the magnitude increases. And look at how many points where it can reflect back into itself, spreading out from here. At all the jagged edges and big steep bends in the plate, that's where it reflects back into itself and builds up into a bigger magnitude. So the standing wave goes across, hits a big steep bend in the plate, breaks, comes back out, breaks in the middle, goes back out, breaks in the middle, goes back out. It's like leapfrog, and breaks as it goes across. New standing wave pops up between each other standing wave over time, over the course of about 7 to 10 days. It's not even that long of a period of time for it to spread out. It's not like we're talking thousands of years or even decades or even single years or even months. We're talking weeks or less, sometimes days of the spread. This is a big one. Let's wrap this up for the people in the center of the Pacific. The people who are going to be wondering, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Well, Kilauea is doing its thing. And Mauna Loa is seismically more active than normal. They've cut off hiking up to the top of Mauna Loa. Now, I would think with a big push like this coming up on the underside of the plate, and all of our volcanoes getting ready to do something around the Pacific, and I say all of them, all of our current eruptors should start to show major activity, and we should see some new volcanoes pop on the list that we haven't seen in a long time, if ever, and we should see some big blasts over the next few days. That's the forecast, quote unquote. I don't forecast for volcanoes, but when it comes to Hawaii, I can certainly tell you, seismic's about to take a big step up. And if I would normally warn you for a 4, I'm going to warn you for more like a 5.9. Should I just call it a 6? Since everywhere else is going to be getting one? A new 6 incoming for Hawaii. Again, I got a magnitude off just in case if the USGS downgrades down to 5. But in the middle between all our sets of quakes. So where's the middle? Well, if you take the 2 on the north side into account at Hualalai and up north of Mauna Kea, and the cluster in the middle, it's almost like a, well, I would call that a square shape of earthquakes. In the middle of the middle is where we watch for the big break to happen. That's Mauna Loa going down to Kilauea. I would also watch for volcanic increase. Just in new lava flows at Kilauea since it's already erupting. And with Mauna Loa there, and what's going on in Mauna Loa, I think seismic at Mauna Loa will go up. Will it be enough to cause an eruption at Mauna Loa? I'm not going to say that now. I'm going to watch for the seismic first. It'll be the first 6 in Hawaii since the big blast. There was a 7.0 earthquake that happened in Hawaii, followed or along with a huge blast from Kilauea when it did its thing a couple years back. So that it won't be as big as that, but it's still going to be pretty big. Again, I'm trying to get it within the magnitude, so it could go as high as 6. All based upon this big, deep quake. Now, there's the potential for other deep quakes on this deep quake. Other deep quakes, let me show you. Final point on the forecast. This is one that only big seismic nerds and people who pay attention on my stream are going to even pay attention to. We're going to watch for the letter D's. Indonesia and Japan. Over here at Afghanistan. Where else? Oh, sorry. Okay. Up here at Sea of Okhotsk, next to Kamchatka. And down here in South America. So all those letter D's should see a round of new significant deep earthquakes. And then guess what happens next to those letter D's? Shallower, larger earthquakes. Just like what I told you about with this, but we shouldn't see a bunch of 7s, a bunch of deep 7s all over the place. It should be more like a bunch of deep 4s and 5s, hammering off all over the place. On top of this, which will then excite things up additionally for at least the next week. And that's going to require new additional forecast for each new round of deep earthquakes that strikes. I'm a one-man operation here. It's going to be a lot of video making, I think. As the deep earthquakes pop off, I'm going to have to issue new warnings around the new deep earthquake locations on top of the warnings that already stand for the big quakes that are going to be hitting. So it's like multiple storms forming, and then they come together and new storms form, and you have to issue warnings for the multiple storms and the new storms. And that's where we're going to be going over the next few days. I would call this seismic overdrive. This only happens a few times a year, so it maybe will happen 3, maybe 4 times a year, where we get what I call seismic go time. This is where you would start to prepare if you live in one of the areas along the red arrows. I live along the red arrows here on the New Madrid seismic zone. I will have a new forecast out covering smaller earthquake activity for the United States and elsewhere in the next few days. And that will cover the New Madrid seismic zone. It'll cover the East Coast. When I say smaller, I mean 4s. So it's not like we're going to all be likely talking about earthquakes in the next 7 to 10 to 14 days at the most, 2 weeks. So throughout November, we're going to be talking about earthquakes most likely. If we don't see any seismic activity off this, I will just be shocked. There will be. If this earthquake is accurate, that's the other possibility I have to finish off with here before we sign off, is to tell you there is the potential that this earthquake or series of earthquakes is not accurately being reported by the professionals somehow. It's some kind of mistake. We've seen it happen before. We've seen them take 6s down to 4s or 3s. They changed a 6 in Italy to be a 3. It knocked down buildings. They said it was a 3. We went with it. I said, okay, well, they got it that wrong. So if they can be wrong by up to 3 magnitudes, then, this could be a deep 4 or something and nobody would care. Now, people were telling me that there was some kind of tsunami warning issued on this. And there could not possibly be an actual tsunami on this deep of an earthquake unless there was some major upwelling that came up from way down below of actual plate rising or something from that far down below. And I would expect something bigger than that. Now, USGS will generate an auto tsunami bulletin sort of thing, like this right here. They'll put the wave on there, and you go over and click it, though. I just want to show our international audience. So while they got the wave on there and make you think that there may be a tsunami or something, instead you get this. No tsunami warning, advisory, threat, or watch, and you click on it. It's just a little advisory statement telling the people about a big earthquake that happened there. And so there's no tsunami on this. But let's go look at the National Data Buoy Center. Let's see what the buoys are showing. Are the buoys showing anything? Buoys are strangely quiet. Normally, when there's a deep earthquake down below the Indo-Australian plate, guess what happens? The buoys start to show activity, blinking all the way around the plate. In this case, I'm not seeing any buoy activity going at all. Anywhere. Is this thing even active? I have to refresh. Do I need to open it in like a different browser or something? Okay, I'm just checking to make sure. So we can click on them. They are active. So there are no buoys in event mode. That's super shady. There's something seriously wrong with that. So I'm going to have to check into that. We should see buoy activity, just like all the other times when a big, deep earthquake hits. This makes me question the deep earthquake. Normally, the buoys were going all the way around the outside edge of the Pacific when you get a big, deep quake. Certainly within a few hours, you would see it light up. Hey, if you've been in there with me, seen big, deep earthquakes before, and you've seen the buoys light up all the way around the Pacific with a deep earthquake like this, press 1 in the chat room. And I want you to be honest. Do not press 1 if you haven't seen it. And so now not to have it, is this even accurate? I have to question it. We'll see. Well, the way we'll know if this is accurate, if this is an actual big, deep quake, we'll see everything I was just talking about. And if this is not an accurate quake, nothing. So, hey, they just changed the earthquake. Yeah, just kidding. Okay, now let's just get back to it. Do you have an earthquake plan? And I'm going to sign off after this. You need to have an earthquake plan. I cannot stress this enough. And the earthquake plan should also maybe possibly encompass other emergency scenarios. Now look at this calm view of my lake here. It's an absolutely beautiful morning here. Look at that. That's a live view on the lake down here. Sunrise on the lake. I would encourage you to at least think about making an emergency kit, and it can overlap for all sorts of things, whether it's for evacuation for a fire that might be incoming, or if you have to shelter in place because of a storm, let's say, and you're cut off without power, or an earthquake hits, or anything else, civil unrest, or any other scenario where you might be cut off for a while. Change of clothes, set of shoes, flashlight, batteries, all the basic things that you would need, you need to have in an emergency kit. Extra IDs, extra set of keys. I know most people don't talk about this, and you probably won't have to use it ever. But a form of self-defense to protect you and the loved ones that you're with people who might be going a little bit out of control because they, the situation. And if there's no food or water and people are caught off guard, you know how people get. They get rude and hot and bothered, as they call it here in the Midwest United States. Looks like we got some fish jumping out there. Look at that. Dang, that's a big one. Look at that. I'm serious. Do you see those? Do you see those? That must be like a giant catfish or a carp or something. Wow. Okay, anyway, you know what? You need to have a little miniature fishing pole in your emergency kit in case you get caught long term, you can go fishing and catch some food and cook it. Little ideas like that, why not? But you'll come up with way better ideas. I would just encourage you to have the emergency kit, and that will have also in it emergency supplies like first aid and your medicines if you're requiring medicines. Just do it, guys, will you please? I will be around if anything else goes down. Please be safe. If anything changes, I will get back on at a moment's notice and do an update for everyone. So if we have to adjust the warned areas, I will adjust it. And if I strike out, I always get back on and cover whether or not I hit an earthquake or not, whether or not it hits in the areas where we're expecting. I will get back on and correct myself, or if it doesn't hit, we will beat ourselves up and try and figure out scientifically where the wave went. as you guys can imagine, look at my lake out here. Okay. When a boat goes through and the wave spreads out, it's somewhat chaotic. You can mathematically forecast how long it'll take the wave to go from one side to the other by looking at the speed of the wave and so forth. But ultimately, when it reflects off and goes back and you start getting into what's called interferometry, which is just a complex word for interfering waves, complex term for interfering anything. But interfering waves, it starts to get a little complex. Where you'd have to be Rain Man or something to be able to keep track of it all at once. Or some kind of. So when we're talking, oh yeah, did you see that? Fish straight up jumped out of the water. There's got to be a bigger fish down in there. The little guys jump out of the water when a big one's in there. Well, this is turning into a really interesting end of an update. You get a beautiful view of the lake. Get to see some fish jumping. Maybe I'll go hit the lake, get the kayak out. Get me out on the water. Old Dutch rowing away. I'll forever be doomed to sail the high seas of the internet like the Flying Dutchman. Be safe. Always remember to keep a stiff upper lip like the Brits do, and to be jovial like I am. Combine the two, you're going to have a heck of a time. Peace out. Much love. Let's go upload this to YouTube. You guys ready for that? Hey, YouTubers, did you guys know that I'm live 24/7 on Twitch with earthquakes 24/7, usually with this scene? You can come over and monitor the earthquakes live and watch the spread laid out on the arrows. It doesn't cost anything to watch. You can just leave it on and let the ding of the bell go and listen for the sound of the earthquakes to hit. I would appreciate it if you shared the information about my forecasting methodology, how I've put it out, had tremendous successes with it, and I am encouraging everyone to test it. I lay this challenge out to the professionals. You can repeat the method. I put out step-by-step directions how to forecast an earthquake, in case you didn't know. So there's no disputing it. I'm not trying to keep it a secret. It's not some kind of secret methodology I'm trying to make a buck on or anything. I have my streams. I have my online. That's how we do anything. If I want to make any money, I'll sell t-shirts or something. By the way, hey, speaking of that, hey, everybody, I got merch. Hey, how do they do it on YouTube? Yo, YouTube, what's cracking? This is so-and-so. I got my merch. Dude, I'm not a Zoomer. I'm sorry. I can't do it. Boomer in effect. Full of boomer in effect now. I'm 46. You know, kids under 30 consider anybody over 40 a boomer. So I'm a boomer. I guess that makes my parents grand boomers. Right? You're a grand boomer or a great grand boomer. And the little Zoomers, the Zoomers are riding around on their hoverboards with their ear pods, their little microwave ear pods, beaming microwaves into their brains, zooming around on their hoverboards. They don't give a shit about anything. Hey, you remember what it's like to be young? You weren't on hoverboards, you were on roller skates, you damn hippie. Okay, 6:38 a.m. Central Time. That's a perfect way to sign it off, you damn hippies. They just legalized cannabis here in Missouri for full recreational use. It's already medical, but now for full recreational, just got put into the Missouri State Constitution. So, immortalized into the Constitution. Much love, everybody. I'm not taking a side either way. Dutch sense doesn't mean anything. Much love. Peace out.